Naš sljedeći govornik je Brian Brown, predsjednik Međunarodne organizacije za obitelj iz Sjedinjenih Američkih Država. Brian Brown jedan je od najpoznatijih zagovornika društvenog konzervativizma i zaštite obitelji u zapadnom svijetu. Večeras će govoriti o Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama pod Trumpovom administracijom i o promicanju društvenog konzervativizma na zapadu. Gospodine Brown, izvolite.
Well, it's great to be back in Croatia. It's great to be back with friends. I always love coming here. I wish I could speak in some way in your own language, but I'm limited to being able to say things like hvala, molimo, bog, odobreno, just a few words. But I think that maybe, Vincent, you're going to teach me. I'll get better at this. So I've been tasked with speaking about the U.S. under the Trump administration promoting social conservatism in the West. I'm going to start with what I think might be a provocative statement. I will say that President Trump and the Trump administration has advanced conservatism and social conservatism in ways that no prior president in the United States has ever done. So let's step back and say, how do we define our terms? Well, when it comes to conservatism, that could take a long time to define. But having spent a lot of time at the World Congress of Families, traveling around the world, meeting with like-minded people, it's one of those things that you know it when you see it. When you show up in a different country and you start talking about the threats to family, talking about the threats to national sovereignty, talking about the threats to the economy, people tend to agree on certain basics. If we want to get a little deeper, I would say that I don't really love the term social conservatism, because conservatism itself is a defense of the accumulated wisdom of Western civilization. That is what it is. From the French Revolution to the present, the three great lies of liberals have been a sort of new trinity of a new religion of class, race, and gender. And the deconstruction, or the use of all those to deconstruct the notion that is deeply embedded within Western civilization, from Aristotle to Thomas Aquinas on, in that the natural law underlines and makes clear that we are made to live in community, and that community is organic, and that we are not always at war with one another, that classes aren't always at war with one another, that genders are not always at war with one another, that races are not always at war with one another. And so if you look at a sort of sweeping history of liberalism, and I know that term also can mean many different things, but let's just use it in the way that most of us use it now, not classical liberalism, but the liberalism that we all, I think, understand what it means. From Marx, beginning with the French Revolution, with classes being pitted together to say, we are going to take down God, we are going to take down the existing order, we're going to have a religion of reason in Notre Dame. It started with the notion of a inevitable conflict of classes. And Marx takes this idea and runs with it, that what history is really a clash of different classes. And he puts into this the Hegelian notion that we can end this by bringing heaven to earth. And let me tell you one thing, whenever anyone tells you they can bring heaven to earth, that is when chaos, evil, disorder, totalitarianism take place. Because in order to bring heaven to earth, you have to do certain things. Because none of us are angels. What you have to do is go against the very nature of what it means to be a human being. Likewise with fascism, race, the notion that somehow we don't all have the dignity that God has given us based somehow on our ethnic, racial differences. right? So fascism. But even prior to fascism, some forms of Darwinism, there was a lot of racial radicalism that was really against traditional conservatism. And the Catholic Church and other churches opposed this because what it tried to say is that there is an inevitable clash between certain races, and some are inherently better than others, and we can demean the dignity of our fellow human beings based on race. Finally, gender. The attempt to redefine what it means to be a man or a woman is one of the most primordial base realities. The fact that you are a man and I am a woman, that is fundamental to who we are as human beings. And if you undermine it, and if you attempt to change it in the law, that is the most radical thing you can do, because we are created in the image and likeness of God, male and female. And once we undermine that, everything else goes. So what is conservatism? Conservatism is saying, no. All of these attempts, and the most recent attempt under the woke agenda, which sort of picks and chooses and combines all of these elements into some new relativism, again, the same thing as trying to bring heaven to earth, saying everything is relative. The first people that move on this, when they say everything's relative, they're the same ones that are saying you conservatives are wrong and we need to defeat you. We need to put you down. No, conservatives cling to the basics of Western civilization, which Christianity is foundational to. Even if you're not Christian, you accept that these ideas, the ideas of the fact that we have human liberty. Thomas Aquinas was no absolutist in this, saying that in certain places it's not prudent to have certain laws against things that are inherently evil, that you have to be prudent, that it changes depending on the circumstances, what can be allowed and not allowed in the law. There's a lot of liberty there. Liberty is key in Christianity. So as a background, with prior presidents, we lost again, and again. In fact, Samuel Francis, a great early American writer on conservatism, wrote a whole book called Beautiful Losers. The Beautiful Losers was about how, this is great. We were right on everything. We predicted everything. And we lost. Well, I don't know about you, but I've been a conservative ever since I can remember, and I don't want to lose. What is politics? Politics is about the acquisition, use, and management of power. That is not something that's inherently bad. For me as a Catholic, Christ is king of everything, including politics, and we need to be involved in every aspect. But even if you're not Catholic, the reality is that power is a part of everyday life. It's a part of everything. It's involved in many of the basic experiences of what it means to be a human. And to say, well, politics is dirty, I'm not going to get involved in it. No, that won't work. Because if you abdicate this field, someone else is going to roll into it. What is power? Power is, we talk about these things, but it's good to step back and define them. Power is the ability to control, direct, or influence the beliefs and actions of others. Conservatives for a long time believed the right thing, but both in politics and the realization of what power is failed tremendously. So in the United States, we have a court. The court the Supreme Court has members that are appointed by our president. Many of those were appointed in the 70s and prior by Republican presidents. And yet, what did they do? In Roe versus Wade, they made up out of thin air some fundamental right within the Constitution that dictated that we, as a country, can allow the killing of unborn children. That had never existed. You will not find any founding father talking about this supposed constitutional right. You can go back to the late 1800s, this didn't exist, and yet we failed time and again. So many other areas of social life we failed. On the family, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, not a card-carrying Republican, a Democrat, realized that the family from the 60s on had gone through a tragic and catastrophic decline, part of it because of the use of the federal government to act as if it was the new father of our children. And the lack of intact families meant that we have a generation of children that don't know what it means to have a father. Do you think that's going to end well? We look at the incarceration rates from the 80s onward. We see a very clear association between fatherlessness and incarceration. The breakup of the family wasn't something that the liberals, that by the way, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was willing to argue with, that said, hey, what's this your business? This is private life. It doesn't matter to anyone else. Huge incarceration rates, suicide ideation, thinking about suicide, drug use, the inability to form future families. The breakdown of society in the United States in many ways goes back to the breakdown of the family. And were prior presidents, even presidents I love, like President Reagan, able to push back? Not really. Reagan was not able to create a court, and Reagan's appointments were not able to create a court that overturned Roe versus Wade, but who did? President Trump. And for that, we should be grateful. Where else did President Trump do things that no other president had done? The more World Congress of Families events I do around the world, the more the common denominator is, what is wrong with your government? The U.S. government is funding, through USAID, all of our political opponents. Your ambassador, I'm in Georgia. Georgians, we have a rally in front of Parliament to protect marriage. Georgians are coming up to me, very loving to me personally, but saying, do you know that your United States ambassador is the one leading the attack on marriage in Georgia? And do you know that your USAID is the one funding all of the groups? So USAID, $28 billion, okay, in total budget. What is the gross domestic product of Croatia? Something like $119 billion, roughly. I may be off a little bit. I think that's pretty much it. We're spending $30 billion going around the world, and if you look at the projects we're doing, there are a lot of projects. You won't believe some of the projects. A DEI musical in Ireland, that was $70,000 the USAID funded. A transgender opera in Colombia, we gave $47,000 to. A transgender comic book in Peru, $32,000. DEI in Serbia, $1.5 million. And look at this, $3.9 million for LGBT initiatives in the Western Balkans. They don't want to name Croatia, but it's the Western Balkans. A lot more money came to Croatia. So if you're wondering where all of this, a country that's, I meet so many Croatians all over, we talk about the Catholic faith, we have agreement on so many things, but then we look at each other and wonder, where is all of this extreme agenda coming from? Well, unfortunately, in the past, the U.S. government was one of the main funders. I did a ton of research on what the Open Society Foundation was funding, right? And the Open Society Foundation got the largest private gift in human history. I mean, there may have been some way back in history, if you look at, you adjust for inflation, yeah, maybe there were some things that emperors did. But apart from that, $32 billion? That's what George Soros gave to the Open Society Foundation. But that's one-time gift. USAID was doing $28 billion a year. So what did Trump do? He put Elon Musk and Doge to come in and clean house. How much did they clean? Well, most of this is gone, I gotta tell you. Okay, there's a lot more that could be done, but out of this, not all of this was going to these transgender operas and LGBT and redefining marriage. Some of the money was spent on other things. I will say even the money spent on other things, often there was an attempt to have ties on it, because when I go to Africa, most of the Africans say, yeah, the US government gave us money, but then they said, if you're going to take the money, you better change your textbooks. What sort of evil is this? And this is my country. I love my country. You love your country. But you realize one day, after the fall of the Soviet Union, growing up as I did as a conservative in Southern California, surrounded by liberals, but loving my country and hating communism and thinking America's a force for good in the world, you wake up one day, 15 years later, and you realize we're being a force for evil in the world. And Trump took it out. $8 billion for most of this nonsense gone. Done. Gone. And I don't see it coming back. The way that USAID is now under Secretary of State, the way that it's done, obviously a future president can change some of this, but the New York Times 2 days ago had a big article on the 16,000 employees, I may be wrong, that were cut, and how many of them are gone for good. They're not looking at coming back into government. And also the interviews, the New York Times was trying to make it, how evil is Trump? He cut the federal government. These people were doing great things. And then you talk to them and they're saying openly, we can no longer do these DEI programs in Ireland. We can no longer do the LGBT. They're open about it. They're not hiding it. So that's a second great advance that Trump did that will play out in the future in big, big ways. I can't think of anything more evil than taking an innocent child and telling them that when you're 10 or 11 years old, you think you're a girl, but you're having some questions about your identity. You think you're a boy, you're having questions about your identity, really you're a girl. Okay, a little child. And then starting them on irreversible chemicals, irreversible, and then doing a surgery on them as if they are an animal. Now, we've had heroic children that have gone through this, like Chloe Cole and others, who've stood up against this and said, no more. And in 27 states, we've passed laws that ban the mutilation of our children. Trump supported all of those. Trump has supported a federal ban through the Protect Children's Innocence Act, which has now gone through our House, and I'm hopeful will pass through the Senate. Without Trump, these things would not have changed. In item after item after item, I can point to about what really human dignity is, not what those who say human dignity is being able to change the gender of a 12-year-old. Who wrap themselves up in good but are actually doing great evil. You may not like some of the things Trump has said. You may not like some of the things he's done. There was a time when Florida had this abortion amendment where he was talking about maybe voting no because he thought it was too extreme. Some of this has to do with politics, but what he actually has achieved, no one else could achieve. I thought, having been involved in the pro-life movement for years, that we had maybe a 20-year window to overturn Roe versus Wade. But we did it. The other thing to realize is, going back to 2008, I've been involved in almost all of the changes to state laws on the definition of marriage. As you know, there's a big movement to redefine marriage. It's pushed here. You had your own referendum. I led the California. I was the chairman of the effort in California to amend the Constitution of the state of California to define marriage as the union of a man and a woman in 2008. You say California? That's one of the most liberal states. Yes. And we won by a direct vote. Taking it to the people, we won. Everyone said we would fail. When I left to go to this campaign, everyone in DC said I was insane. But the people in America are far less gone on these issues than one might think, even in California. When they have a chance to go into the polling booth privately, they voted the right way. Then in North Carolina in 2012, you may say 2008 is so far away, everything's changed. 2012, we won in North Carolina with the help of Billy Graham by 62.5%. We won in a number of states with the ballot initiative. What stopped us? This was prior to Trump. This was prior to the current court. We lost by one vote in the court in a decision called Obergefell, where again, just like in Roe versus Wade, our Supreme Court said, we don't care that the people voted. We're going to make up out of thin air the notion that the U.S. Constitution demands the redefinition of marriage. So all of the votes that we were involved in, a total of 60 million voters, all of their votes were thrown in a trash bin, destroyed. Didn't matter because of the court. Now there's an increasing effort by some states to push back against this. But I'm telling you this, if the current court would have been there, I am quite confident that we would never have lost on a national level through court action the redefinition of marriage. Out of that fight came one other aspect I want to talk about, and it's the modern advent of political violence on the part of the left, and the use of our courts and lawfare to destroy the ability for people to make money, the people to live their lives, and people's names and ability to have their names not undermined and attacked by pure lies. After the end of Proposition 8, when we won, I personally was physically attacked. I had multiple death threats. The others that were involved were, but most importantly, people who gave even $100 to our campaign were physically attacked. There was violence. This is really the advent of Antifa in the United States, was this issue of the redefinition of marriage, that sort of violence. That increased through this entire period. We had the FBI investigating folks who were involved in the pro-life and pro-family movement. We had my board chairman, John Eastman, who was an advisor to President Trump. He recently had his law license removed by the state of California for giving President Trump advice on election fraud. He also has been put through a ringer of criminal indictments in Arizona. He was under a criminal indictment. In Atlanta, Georgia, Fani Willis, he had a criminal indictment. He spent over $1.5 million defending his ability to practice law and to stand up for what he believes in. Again, President Trump, the political violence, he is not putting up with it. On our streets in Washington, D.C., where you used to walk down the street and if you had a MAGA hat on, someone may take a swing at you. Now we have National Guard standing all over, so that won't happen. People like Fani Willis have been, because of investigations of people within the conservative journalistic world, but also because of legal, good judges and good lawyers have been put out of their position. Most importantly, our Justice Department is acting on those who attempted to destroy through lies the reputation of people like me and others. The Southern Poverty Law Center listed me and my organization, the International Organization for the Family, as a hate group. They put us right up next there to Nazis in their hate group. Many other of our friends, the Family Research Council, all of these groups were put in here as if to put a target on our heads to say, because we stand for the traditional family, we deserve to be physically attacked. So many threats came after that. Come to find out that the Southern Poverty Law Center was giving millions of dollars to actual Nazis. I'm not making this up. The Justice Department just launched an indictment and just went after the Southern Poverty Law Center because they have records that the Southern Poverty Law Center was itself funding real Nazis. Why? They say it's because they needed to have informants. I don't know any prior president that would have the guts to go after a $500 million organization that prides itself on being the Southern Poverty Law Center. We defend civil rights. And his Department of Justice is willing to have a reckoning. Now, I don't want vengeance, okay? What I do want is a reckoning of justice. That those who use the power of law to attack pro-lifers, those who use the power of threats and violence will be held to justice. And Trump is doing just that. So I'll end by saying there's no one that's done anything like that as president. Trump was in a unique position. A lot of very bad things had occurred, but he stood up time and time again in defense of life and the family and true religious liberty. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more that I believe Trump will do, but we need to be honest and we need to be thankful that when Trump had the ability to exercise power, he did so, and he exercised it for the common good in defense of the basics of family, life, and religious liberty. God bless America, and God bless Croatia.